The year was 1944. War had turned the world into ashes. In a small village near the mountains, a young soldier named Daniel stood beside a crowded train station. Smoke filled the cold air as mothers cried, children held their fathers tightly, and soldiers prepared to leave for the battlefield. Daniel was only 21 years old. Before stepping onto the train, he looked back one last time. Standing behind the crowd was a girl wearing a simple blue dress. Her name was Emma. She was the reason his heart still believed in peace. Emma slowly walked toward him, her eyes already filled with tears. "Will you come back?" she whispered. Daniel forced a small smile. "I promise." But deep inside, he knew war never kept promises. The train whistle screamed through the station. Soldiers climbed aboard one by one. Daniel held Emma's hands tightly for a few seconds longer, as if he could stop time itself. Then he left. Weeks turned into months. The battlefield was nothing like the stories people told back home. There was no glory, no honor, only mud, fear, hunger, and endless screams. Every night Daniel wrote letters to Emma. He wrote about the stars above the trenches, about the cold rain, about how much he missed hearing her laugh. But he never wrote about death. He never told her how many friends he had buried with his own hands, because he wanted Emma to remember hope. One freezing night during heavy bombing, Daniel sat inside a broken shelter with a lantern beside him. Explosions shook the earth around him. Still, he opened a small notebook and began writing. "Dear Emma, if this letter reaches you, it means I am still alive somewhere beneath the same sky you see every night. War has taught me something strange. People only understand the value of peace after hearing enough screams. If I return, I want a simple life, no riches, no medals, just a small house, your smile, and silence without gunfire. And if I do not return, promise me you will continue living for both of us." A tear dropped onto the paper. At that moment, a loud explosion destroyed the shelter. Darkness swallowed everything. Days later, soldiers searched through the ruins. Among the broken stones and ashes, they found Daniel's notebook covered in dust. But Daniel himself was gone. No body was ever found. Only silence remained. Back in the village, Emma waited every single day near the old train station. People slowly stopped talking about the war. Life moved forward. Shops reopened. Children laughed again. But Emma still waited. Every evening she looked toward the railway tracks, hoping to see one familiar face walking through the smoke. Years passed. Her hair slowly turned grey. Still, she waited. Villagers often asked her, "Why do you still believe he will come back?" Emma would smile softly and answer, "Because love remembers even when the world forgets." One winter morning, nearly 30 years after the war ended, an old military officer arrived at Emma's house carrying a small wooden box. Inside it was Daniel's notebook. The officer explained that the notebook had been lost in military archives for decades before finally being discovered. Emma's trembling hands touched the dusty pages carefully as though she were touching Daniel himself. Then she found the final unfinished letter. At the bottom of the page, beneath the stains of rain and ash, Daniel had written one last sentence. "No matter where history buries me, my heart will always find its way back to you." Emma could no longer hold back her tears. For the first time in 30 years, she cried like the young girl standing at the train station once again. That evening, she walked slowly to the old railway station, carrying Daniel's notebook close to her chest. The station was empty now, silent, forgotten. Snow began falling gently from the sky. Emma sat on the same wooden bench where they had said goodbye decades ago. She looked toward the distant tracks and whispered softly, "You came back after all." A peaceful smile appeared on her face, and as snow covered the quiet station, Emma closed her eyes for the final time. The next morning, villagers found her sitting there peacefully, holding Daniel's last letter against her heart. Side by side, they buried Emma and Daniel's notebook beneath the old mountain tree where they once dreamed of a future untouched by war. Years later, travellers passing through the village would sometimes stop near the tree. They would see two names carved into stone, and beneath them a simple sentence: